A few weeks ago, I did a video which was on analyzing your games to get the best results. Now, that video was quite popular and some people were asking that I expand on what I spoke about in that video. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly show you phases 1 and 2 of a game that I played today, where I do the analyzing of the game myself by replaying it and trying to find mistakes in the game. Now, I will be doing this on the computer today. Normally, when I do my analyzing, I do it on the board with a pen and paper, but don't worry, I've got the notes on the computer, so you don't need to read my terrible handwriting. But the benefit of doing it on the computer is I'll be able to draw lines and show you visually what's going on. The computer does have its advantages. Just make sure when you're on the computer, you don't use the engine. I'll quickly show you what I've got here. On the side, I have my notes that I've kept for the game, and I've got a window to type in. One of the parts in this video series is going to be on how to store your games, where I'll show you how to store these games on a database so that you can edit them and add your notes. I'll quickly show you what I've done here. So at the beginning of the game, I've just left in a quick note about how I felt about the game and what was going on. I spoke a lot about the time controls, the fact that the opening wasn't one that I was really prepared for, and just how I felt throughout the game. In this game, I felt like I was very lost at the middle game, and towards the end game, I felt at best it was going to be a draw, but I was probably going to lose. As we go through the game, you can see that you can draw lines and sort of express ideas that you had through the game. So here I was talking about, I'm not really sure how to play the English, so I'm going to see if I can transpose it into a King's Indian defense. And leaving in notes in there about little ideas that are happening throughout the game. Now, I won't go through all of these in details. I will point out this one move here was a little bit odd. I don't quite understand it, so I've made a note in there, and I'm going to look back on this one in the future to see if I can find out why the player did what they did, because this move feels a bit weird to me. So I've made a note of it in the side. This move does not seem right to me. Of course, chucking in plans here, I spoke about not knowing which pawn I was going to move. Would it be the E pawn or the C pawn? And I also spoke about ideas that my opponent had. Now, I'm going to go through this quickly because if I wanted to speak about this video could actually go for over an hour. So I want to keep it nice and brief, just to show you the idea of what it looks like to replay your own game and take notes. Now, let's go back a few moves. At around move 10, I actually put in a note about the opening, and as it's come to a close and we both developed, we've castled or we're getting there, now's the time to leave a little note in there how you felt the opening played out. I put that I was a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit out of my knowledge. I haven't developed my light squared bishop and my queen is still on her starting square. Therefore, my development here feels like it's going to be a little bit tricky. White, on the other hand, is ready to castle. I don't know which way he's going to go, but his pawn seems a little bit weird. So we both got our ups and downs for what it looks like as far as the opening. I'm not sure if either of us are too happy. I feel like I could have done a lot better. So it's important to note that kind of stuff down so that when you're looking through your notes, when you're analyzing with the engine, you can read back and go, oh yeah, this is something that I need to work on. Now we're in the middle game, so we start commenting, and here you can see that I've got different lines to play around with. If I'm a little bit unsure of what's going on, I can just sort of click through the lines, and I've already played these out as I was analyzing just to see how the board feels. Again, down here, I obviously had one way of doing a trade, but I can look at another way of doing a trade and seeing how that actually shows up on the board. Try to visualize and then try to play it out to see if you correctly visualize it and if it feels like a comfortable result for you. Now, obviously, I've left notes in here and I've drawn lines in here. That's the advantage of doing it on a computer. Please don't draw lines on your actual chessboard. But it's a good way to visualize, and it's a good way to share ideas with people as well. Here was another critical point for me, and the critical point is I could have looked at queen to a5, but I was worried about queen takes e7, and I failed to calculate that then I could have played b3, put the king in check, and then I would have an easy path to getting my pawn to a2. So that's one of the key points that I've taken away from this game is I was afraid that the queen would take. However, check, and once the king moves or defends, the pawn is one square away from promotion. And I think that's one of the biggest parts in the game. Now, when I did my analyzing, I actually went through and I found this after the game. And that's what you want to be doing when you're analyzing the game without the engine. You want to be looking for those mistakes that you and your opponent missed out on or made, and you want to see if you can find better. So to me, this one looks like a better move. I will be running it through the engine to see if I am correct or if there's any mistake there. And of course, my opponent never needed to play queen takes e7 either. So we don't really know how this would have turned out, but it's definitely one I will be running through the engine. And I think this move here is one of the biggest mistakes that I had. Instead, I didn't see that, and I played here just to open it up for the check. But I feel like queen a5 would have been that move. And that's what you want to do when you're replaying the game, is you want to find those key moves that could have given you a significant edge. So obviously play around with all different types of options, move the pieces around the board, and yeah, that's how you analyze the games. So let's just continue through here. Again, admitting moves that seem a little bit odd is key here, because as you analyze more games and you start to point out that moves seem a little bit odd here and there, you'll start to pick up on patterns of your own weaknesses, and that's where you can really find areas to work on. Now we're on move 19, so if I go back up to move 6, I've got e5 or c5, both options that I can do. And I admit to myself, this is sort of a weakness that I have of never knowing which pawn here is the ideal pawn to push. And that's one that comes up in my games a lot, and that's one that I need to work on. And by analyzing the games, you're going to recognize that pattern when you work on your own questions and you keep asking, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? So make sure that you are asking questions when you play. Don't just, okay, well, I played that move, so that's going to be the move to play. Ask questions and figure out your style of play and where you're going wrong. That's the whole point of analyzing this without an engine. Here's where I feel like I really started to lose control of the game over these next few moves. I've kind of pushed the pawns in, and I've allowed my opponent to get a couple of center pawns moving down the F and E file. And I feel like this is going to cause issues for me. Again, another key move. I feel like I could have moved my queen to b6 and then had a discovered check that I could have used later in the game. But instead I just went for the queen trade. Now I was running low on time. As you can see, I've got 3 minutes left. My opponent has almost all of his time left. So trying to find the best moves sometimes can be a bit hard, but that's why we review the game after, and then we see if we can find the best moves so that we know about them in the future. And another critical moment, and this is the best part about analyzing, is you get to sit back and think. Now I've only got 2 minutes on my clock here, so I don't have all the time to think. But when I'm analyzing the game, I have as much time as I want to see if I can justify why I did the move that I did. Now, this move here is a critical moment where I could trade the knight for the bishop, or I could trade my own bishop for their bishop. And I went for the knight trade, and having a look through the board now, if I had traded my bishop, my knight would have had a very hard time getting to any good squares. I feel like I did the good trade here, but I'm still going to note it down, and that way when I analyze with the engine, I can double check that I did make the right decision instead of just feeling like I made the right decision. Now we're entering the end game, and again, I've made notes here. I've also made notes stating how I feel the game is going right now. And personally, I feel like I am losing big time. I feel like white has better pawns, better opportunities. My pieces are all pushed away in the corner, so I'm not really happy here. I also have 1 minute on the clock, and my opponent's got 13 minutes. So yeah, I'm not really happy about this one here. But again, we play on. And again, you can see over here that I've got a lot of different variations that I work out to see if I can find winning variations. And now I'll show you how the game finishes. I still feel my opponent is doing quite well. However, now I feel like the game is actually drawn. I feel like all I need to do is get the rook behind his pawn, and I should be able to hold off him promoting. As you can see, his king can no longer come down the board. It's been cut off by my rook, and the pawn is not going to be able to promote while the rook is in front of it. So the rook will have to move. So I just need to be very careful not to fall for any tricks, and I should be able to hold this one off as a draw. But my opponent actually makes a mistake, and I put a little question mark here because I feel like this is the key moment where the game went from my opponent having a draw to me now winning the game. And this is going to be another part where I'm going to go through the game and I'm going to see if I can find any spots where my opponent could have turned it around. I'm going to try and learn this end game a bit more, and I am going to see if I can pinpoint the right spot where he makes a mistake and I end up winning from it. So the game continued and we got the win. And then we have a look at the end. I'm just going to put down a few notes. So the opening was decent. I need to find out why he played d3 in the beginning. The middle game, I missed some plans. I need to work on calculation and I need to study those up. And the end game, I need to study the rook and pawn end games to make sure I know what exactly is going on. I need to understand if I was actually in a losing position at any time or if it was just completely drawn. And a lot of this stuff is going to come through when I go back through and analyze with the engine, which I'll be doing in the next video. So if you like this content and you find it valuable, feel free to hit subscribe. We'll be talking about the engine next, and then we'll be going over other concepts that we talked about in the Analyze Your Games video. If you haven't seen that video, I recommend you check it out. It's been helpful for a lot of people. And yeah, that's it. I'll see you next time.